They don't always announce it. No dramatic goodbye. No final message. One day, they simply stop replying. Calls go unanswered. Messages sit unread. And over time, the silence becomes permanent. From the outside, it can feel confusing, even cold. But the psychology of people who cut off contact with everyone is often more complex than it appears. In many cases, this behavior is not impulsive. It's cumulative. It builds slowly through repeated emotional strain, misunderstandings, unmet expectations, feeling unseen or unheard. When these experiences stack over time without resolution, the brain begins to reassess the cost of staying connected. At a certain point, withdrawal no longer feels extreme. It feels logical. One of the core drivers is emotional exhaustion. Maintaining relationships requires energy, communication, empathy, negotiation, compromise. For individuals who feel they are consistently giving more than they receive, or constantly adapting to others without reciprocity, that energy becomes depleted. Cutting off contact can feel like shutting down a system that has been running beyond capacity for too long. There's also the role of boundary failure. Some people attempt to set limits repeatedly, asking for space, expressing discomfort, trying to redefine the relationship. But when those boundaries are ignored or dismissed, the mind begins to escalate its response. If small boundaries don't work, it resorts to a large one. Total disconnection becomes the final form of self-protection. Past experiences shape this tendency as well. Individuals who have experienced betrayal, manipulation, or chronic invalidation often develop a lower tolerance for relational risk. Their nervous system becomes more sensitive to signs of potential harm. What others might tolerate, they interpret as warning signals. Cutting off contact, in this context, is not about avoidance, it's about prevention. Attachment style plays a significant role. Those with avoidant attachment patterns are more likely to withdraw when relationships feel overwhelming or emotionally demanding. Closeness can trigger discomfort rather than safety. Distance restores control. On the other hand, even individuals with anxious tendencies may reach a breaking point where repeated disappointment leads to abrupt disengagement. When effort feels one-sided for too long, detachment can replace pursuit. Control is another underlying factor. Relationships involve unpredictability, other people's moods, choices, reactions. For individuals who feel destabilized by that unpredictability, eliminating contact simplifies the emotional landscape. It removes variables. The environment becomes quieter, more manageable. There is also a cognitive shift that often precedes this behavior, devaluation. When someone decides to cut off contact, they may begin reframing the relationship in their mind, focusing on negatives, minimizing positives. This helps reduce internal conflict. It allows the decision to feel justified rather than painful. Psychologically, it's easier to leave when the connection no longer feels meaningful. However, it's important to distinguish between healthy disengagement and global withdrawal. In some cases, cutting off contact is necessary, especially in toxic or harmful environments. It can be an act of clarity and self-respect. But when the pattern extends to everyone, it may signal something deeper: unresolved hurt, trust erosion, or a belief that connection inevitably leads to disappointment. Isolation can initially feel like relief. Fewer demands, less emotional friction, more control. But over time, the human need for connection doesn't disappear. It becomes quieter, sometimes harder to access, but it remains. Prolonged disconnection can shift from protection into limitation. Interestingly, people who cut off contact often have strong pattern recognition. They notice inconsistencies quickly. They remember emotional details. They track effort and imbalance. This awareness can be valuable, but when combined with past hurt, it can lead to overgeneralization. The mind stops distinguishing between individuals and begins applying the same rule to everyone. Cutting off contact is rarely about not caring. More often, it's about caring for too long without feeling safe or understood. It's the point where the cost of staying outweighs the fear of leaving. But decisions made in protection can become permanent beliefs if they're never re-examined. And sometimes, what begins as a boundary slowly turns into a wall.